I spent like the last 2 days like just like watching a ton of TED Talks and Creative Mornings and trying to figure out like how can I like convey a message across to everyone. Do you guys mind if I start off with a joke? I have like terrible humor, so it's very dad joke-ish. So it goes like this, right? People call me ugly until they find out how much money I make. And they call me ugly and poor. And what I love about that kind of humor is that it's so real and it's so existential. It makes you feel, you know. One of my favorite philosophers, Soren Kierkegaard, always believed that humor is the best way for us to deal with life's injustices. The only way for us to tactically and intelligently like comment on life is through humor, you know. Humor itself is a craft. You know, always there to make light of everything and make sense of stuff, you know. So, what is a craft, basically? So, from that blurb on, ooh, sorry. I'm a little nervous over here. So, on the Creative Mornings site, there's actually a little blurb that speaks about what a craft is. And a craft is an instrument in which authenticity is being communicated. Your craft is a portal to your inner world. Now, for you guys to understand the secrets of my craft and understand my craft, you have to understand my personal experiences and understand my world before you can understand anything else. So the origin of my obsession. Alright, so I grew up in a home where I was pretty much very isolated from a lot of people. My mom had this weird thing of like keeping us indoors. She didn't like us playing outside with other kids. It was very weird for some strange reason. And I grew up watching quite a lot of weird TV shows. So it was just me, my sister, and my brother, and we would stay at home. Oopsie. Stay at home, isolated, and all I did was draw every single day. I had nothing else to do. When you're growing up in a very isolated environment, you tend to focus on smaller aspects of yourself. And from 6 years old, I started really focusing on drawing. I remember September 11th had just happened. And, you know, I was like, what, like five years old. And I remember at the time, one of my favorite TV shows, Teletubbies, was on. And next thing I saw was just like news everywhere, buildings smoky on fire, and I was like, what the fuck's happening? You know, at 5 years old, I'm just like, I didn't care. Next day I go to like my nursery school and they ask us, yo, so a couple thousand people died. How does that make you feel? Draw something and like, let's speak about this. It was like a little conversation we had as kids. And I remember drawing the worst piece of art ever. It was fucking awful, Jesus. And my crash teacher loved it so much that she put it above like all the best drawers in the class. And at that moment, like things just clicked in my head where I was just like, actually, I want to be an artist. I want to draw. And I remember saying to my sister like, hey, I want to be like the best drawer in the world. And she's like, there's like billions of people on this planet. You will never be the best drawer in the world. It was super depressing. Growing up as a kid, growing up as well, I was very out the ordinary. So I was like 10 years old and I discovered this band called Linkin Park, and they were very like out there and like just very alternative. And as a colored 10-year-old boy, listening to Linkin Park is the weirdest thing ever, because a lot of your friends are all like listening to like Tupac and Ja Rule and shit, and you're listening to like Linkin Park. So weird. And at that time I discovered skateboarding. And skateboarding has been the biggest creative influence in my life. Skateboarding has made me become very free-flowing. It's helped me become very liquid. You know, there's this saying about wabi-sabi, like going with the flow, you know, also like working with what's broken. And that's what skateboarding was for me, you know. So I was very inspired by the alternative culture. And even through all of that, I just found myself and my peace within skateboarding. Music was the biggest thing for me. I think music still is the biggest thing for me right now. You know, even when I was like younger, you know, watching really weird animated shows like Ren and Stimpy with my dad and like not making sense of everything. Very macabre and very dark. I've always just been a very dark artist, and you guys will see like a lot of my work's very different, you know. I grew up in a home where no one was creative. I was the only artist, I was the only person who drew and created. My sister wrote a lot of poetry, but you know, my parents weren't really so much about approval, you know. So I used to create a lot of work to get my parents' approval. I think that's why I created copious amounts of drawings, and I did so many paintings, was I was trying to search for this outside approval from someone else, you know. It was wild, it was a good run, but it was cool. I then went to, my mom saw the knack of like me drawing all the time, and she basically enrolled me into the National School of the Arts, where I met a lot of other creatives around my age. And being an NSA, and being a skateboarder, and being a little metalhead, you were just like the weirdo. So being a weirdo in art school is also just like the funniest thing ever. It's just so much fun because everyone's like, you're just so against the grain, and when you're in art school, everyone's against the grain, but if you're against that grain, then you're like, whoa, you know? And it was beautiful. I learned so many of my fundamentals. I was a 3D design student, so I worked with a lot of ceramics, a lot of sculpting. I was a design student as well, so I learned the fundamentals and elements of design. And being in high school was just a beautiful experience, and I learned so much, and I met such amazing people, with my friend Bale over here, just sitting in the back. It was just one of like the most beautiful experiences, you know. I was very angsty. I was a very, very angsty kid, you know. I'm very angry. And then I started studying at the Open Window Institute.
Woo, Open Window!
Woo! I was actually a game design student, game design and 3D animation. And I didn't really know much about illustration. I just drew quite often. But I remember in my first year, I picked up this minor subject called illustration, which was a lot like the stuff I learned in high school, but it was more adulty because we could draw like nude people, and I was like super weird. And I was like, that's cool, that's cool. And in there, I started really focusing on illustration. But things started getting really weird in my life. So this is just the work I did in 2015. I had this bad habit of recreating a lot of pieces and a lot of themes. In 2014, I fell in love. I'm still young, so I still have enough time to fall in love. But at that time, it mattered to me the most. She was a beautiful woman named Carla. And we dated for a bit, and she committed suicide in December 2014. And I was in and out of psychiatric hospital because of that. And growing up in a home where I wasn't really open to being creative, I drew all the time, and I had to find a way to deal with this never-ending wave of depression and anxiety. Just trying to figure out myself in the grander scheme of things. I would sit at home and listen to music and draw and draw and draw and draw. A lot of my themes were somewhat dark. A lot of my themes are still somewhat dark. A lot of my themes deal with mental illness. I feel like it's a conversation that's not really spoken about among the creative community in South Africa. It is spoken about here and there, but I feel like all of us suffer to an extent with a sibling or a relative that has mental illness, you know. I'm not trying to make this a PSA on mental illness, it's just like, you know. After Carla passed away, I was admitted into psychiatry, as I said. I had severe insomnia. I think that's where it also really started, like me being a night owl, not really sleeping, not really like focusing or functioning well. So I was dealing with my own anxiety, my own depression and insomnia, and the only way I could really focus on this was creating. And in 2015, that's when I started really focusing on illustration, and I really started putting myself down. As you can see, you'll see the progression in my work as the slides continue. But I created every single day. But there was this one point in 2015 where I couldn't take it anymore, and I attempted suicide, and I was put into ICU for 3 days. It was pretty of a rough one, but I think it was like an awakening, like it was like this moment of like realization that that was selfish, and for me to take myself away from everyone else is to starve the world from something new and something beautiful, you know. So 2016, I started developing my style in 2016. I started focusing a lot more on line work. I started focusing a lot on just peering over, looking into the oneself. A lot of my work in 2016 wasn't so conceptual. It was more based on approach, very based on line and color. My work was very colorful at that point, which is very contradictory to like how I was feeling at the time. I thought that if I made work that was beautiful and colorful and work that people could see and feel this aesthetic from, that maybe, just maybe, I would feel better, you know. Tried my best, and it worked. Did a lot of cool stuff in 2016. I think I had my first feature, which was super cool.
Your first?
My first feature, which was super cool. Yeah, started rehabilitating myself with illustration, which is the best part because while I was doing that, I was continuously deconstructing myself, my style as well. I would spend weeks, I shit you not, weeks, where I would wake up at 6 in the evening, not even wake up, like not sleep, and then 6 in the evening start an illustration, finish it off, start a new one, finish it off, start a new one, and then try and sleep. And then the next day I'd look at all 3 I made and be like, whoa. So this was one of the first pieces that actually got some recognition. I did this for Sean Hill's Backbutt Zine. It was a little feature which I was super proud of. It's still hands down one of my favorite illustrations. Yeah, my work was just very, a lot of it was in my head. I lived in my, I mean, as creatives and I think as artists, we all live in our heads. We all have this preconceived notion that the world's out to get us. So the only way we escape that is through creating for ourselves. You know? Yeah. And then in 2017, everything really started changing. I started using my craft more and I started making sense of things. I started really grabbing with what's inside and pulling it out and allowing people to see that. By using color and using emotion, I started like really focusing on like themes and concepts. So this is one of my favorite pieces called Duality, and I think it's called Duality of the Human. It deals with 2 sides of oneself. It deals with the positive, warmer aspects of yourself. Your more feminine, your more maternal, loving, caring self, as opposed to your more aggressive, dominant, and macabre side of yourself. Because humans, it's all duality. We all have 2 aspects of ourselves, you know. I started really focusing on emotion, because emotion is like what drives me, especially as a creative. I think emotion is the most important thing in life for me. Because we're human. I don't think anything else shares that experience but us, you know. This is where things started getting really crazy, because I started like really getting dark, like really dark. Like I found out about death grips and I started listening to like really darker music and stuff. And that's when I had the opportunity of collaborating with like a lot of other brands and people that started aligning with me as an individual. A friend of mine, Bangy, owns one of my favorite streetwear brands known as Dead 93. He collaborated with Anatomy and he asked me if I wanted to illustrate that, and I'll show you guys the work further on in the slides. I did this piece for Between 10 and 5 for your guys' Men Are Trash series, which was sold, which was amazing. And I was still trying to figure out being conceptual. Whoopsie. Oh, no, that's sad. I think I knocked the mic. Let me try this. Yeah, I think I can speak. That better? Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna rap right now, like, yo, what's up? This one, I think it's called Love. Shit, okay, all my work is untitled. I never really titled my work. Only lately I started titling my work after I'd hear like a line or 2 from one of my favorite musicians or my favorite rapper, and I based this entire illustration on that. This was a poster I did for an event that was gonna happen, but it's still one of my favorite illustrations, probably one of my favorite pencil sketches. What I usually used to start doing is like really focusing on the face and focusing a lot on human expression and how you can use the face in multiple ways. I mean, you'll see all my work is very just portrait based, you know. Then I started experimenting with texture. I started looking at artists like A.K.A, Polish artist, and he is one of my favorites because he's very texture driven, and I feel like texture really brings out emotion. It brings out the grimier, grungier sides, and that's when I started getting really inspired by the city. Being a skateboarder as well, you were kind of like free. You could do whatever you want in Johannesburg. You could just get on your skateboard and push all the way down to Maboneng, and then skate all the way to Jeppystown, and then skate all the way back to Newtown, you know. And while you're doing that, you're just exposed to like grime and dirt and rubbish, and I realized I could take those small elements and put that into work, like the pieces of, you know, rubbish on the floor, paint textures on the floor, take pictures of that, and take it into an illustration, draw that, scan it in. My process started like getting way more developed, and I started focusing way more on just creating work that is texture driven, that feels, you know. That's another piece I did for a friend of mine, which was supposed to be an album cover, but he was like, nah. And I was like, cool, I'll keep it. It's so weird because I do a lot of that. Like, I'll do like an album cover for like an artist. Like, I'm currently now doing work for a UK label named 1985 from the drum and bass artist Alex Perez. And I'll be like doing some work, and then it'll be my favorite piece, and I'll be like, nah, dude, can I keep this? I'll give it back to you, you know? This was, I think,
wow, this one was an exhibition for the open window. I don't remember what this one was. I really don't remember. I do so much work that I don't remember what half the stuff I do most of the time, which is pretty crazy. But as I was saying, started focusing on more texture, darker elements within the self. I felt like I was just taking what was really killing me on the inside and trying to make light of it, trying to take the darker elements of myself and bring that into a lighter context, you know? This is another piece I started experimenting. And you can see the progression in my style. It started off very line-based, and it started becoming very tone-based. I started working with different brushes and different textures in Photoshop. I started working with my own textures. On the left is a piece I did for Dizzy Gillespie, also for Jean-Michel Basquiat, who's like been one of my biggest influences since I could remember. Being someone that's, you know, he himself suffered his own mental illnesses, and he still created such beautiful works of art. And to the right is one of my favorite rappers named Old Sweatshirt, who creates some of the most amazing, lyrically deep music. I mean, fuck, he's like one of my favorites, you know, like the MF Doom of our generation, you know what I mean? And these were pieces I made for them, but I was experimenting and trying to find ways I can communicate what I feel from that music out there. And that's the thing about your craft. It's you communicating what's within you out there. This is another piece, some more pieces I did throughout 2017. In 2017, I worked on a series where I decided I would do an illustration a day. I mean, I did an illustration a day every day, but I would actually tell the world, hey, I'm doing an illustration a day every day. And some artists actually joined me on that train, which is beautiful. I actually got really overwhelmed with work because more and more clients started recognizing my work and my potential, and they started working with me. The one on the left, or on my right, your left, is all about anxiety. This is when I started really focusing on really like just bringing anxiety to a visual feel. What happens in my head, the thoughts I have, and the conversations I continuously have with myself. Yeah, I started experimenting way more with texture and working with different brushes, keeping it, you know, chill, you know, also like kind of cool, you know. So the one on the right was, I did this piece for a song I heard from this rapper named Lupe Fiasco, which is called Little Weapon. It's about child soldiers, and I've just been somewhat obsessed with the concept of child soldiers. It's just fucking macabre, man. Jeez, like having your youth stolen like that, and I wanted to create some works from that. Texture has been the main thing for me. It's always just been the most important thing, you know. This is the collab I did with Anatomy. So this was a very fun experience. The whole theme was Anatomy, dead forensics unit, you know. So I had to basically just create something for a brand that was macabre and dark, and they worked with my theme and my style. And it came out perfect, you know, it was amazing. Around about August, October 2017, I was approached by Adidas to create an art piece for A$AP Ferg when he came to South Africa. I don't know what to do. He was releasing his new shoe, Trap Lord Hood Pope. I had no idea what to do. I was freaked out. And I realized, like, dude, shit, my work is dark. How are people gonna really like this? But I just experimented and I pushed that. And through me continuously drawing every day and just grabbing what's within me and taking that out, people started recognizing that and people started seeing that. And I ended up having dinner with him, you know, personal. Like, I know him by person now. We can converse on a first name basis. I learned that he went to art school just like me, similar struggles just like me. And it's crazy what your craft can do for you. It can take you to different places and it can make you meet people you never expected you were gonna meet, you know. This year was the year that a lot of things changed in my life. A lot. I started collaborating with like a lot of different brands and I started making sense of myself and trying to make myself more of a professional. I had to stop living my life on this emotional hub. I just had to be like focused. So I started the year off with collaborating with Sneaker Lab, which was a really fun experience called Dirty Clean. Basically me speaking about the contrast between Johannesburg and you know, the suburbs, the dirty, clean aspects of Johannesburg, which is super tight. I collaborated with Lorenzo Blackies as well, another really amazing illustrator. I collaborated with a guy named Ruff Mercy, who directed Tom Misch and Loyal Connor's music video. He also directed one of Sam I Am and Earl Sweatshirt's music videos, which is really cool. Yeah, I really just started taking what's in my head and putting that into a broader context where more people can actually understand. Collaborated with Austin Malema on his solo exhibition, Credit the Photographer. Collaborated with Homotso Neto for Jameson, did some work for Jameson as well. I had a talk with Valentine, Kid Funk and Dave Martian a few months ago about the Stay True Lab series, about staying true to your craft and staying true to yourself. I've lost count of the stuff I've done this year so far, you know. Like going through this presentation earlier, I was like, damn, so much shit I could have added, but anyways. But the main thing is I started finding myself, you know, this year. I really started making sense of things. Like I said, I'm still very young. There's a lot of things I can still learn. There's a lot of experiences I'm still gonna learn. But what I've experienced right now is that I'm just ready to create and using that, you know, as a tool to speak. So this is the original design I did for Sneak Lab. We printed some t-shirts and we had a whole pop-up venue. I know Karabo had hers the other day, which is amazing. It was cool, you know, doing the things, you know. This is my collab with Lorenzo Blackies. My whole idea, I had this whole theme of dissecting a human's head, like cutting it open and spitting it out. Kind of getting what's in there out, you know. So that was my whole theme about beauty and acceptance. It was a fun collab. Started working way more with texture, way more with texture. I would actually go to some of my artist friends at like studios and take pictures of the work they did, and then try and work that with an overlay. Working on like watching movies and trying to create posters for these movies, just as a fun way of just like experimenting with more textures, experimenting with more of my deeper thoughts, anxiety, just really trying to make better art. And as you can see, like a lot of my work has just changed completely. Started working with more illustrated lines, trying to keep it very chill and cool. Started experimenting with more stippling and tone. Started deconstructing how tone would fall on the face. For a long time as an illustrator, it's illustrative, so it's very experimental and it's very like watered down. But what I realized is more people enjoy the idea of realism, but especially realism that's captured in an animated sense. I don't know how to explain it. And I started really experimenting with way more texture and tone and taking quotes from Basquiat and putting there in the pieces of work, you know. Still, this was my whole theme of like capturing what I thought, what I felt, writing it down into an illustration and then working an overlay. So this is my collaboration with Austin Malema. I don't know if you guys can see it properly. Super dark, oh no. But yeah, it was all about crediting the photographer. And what I would do was, my thoughts and opinions I had on this entire collaboration or this exhibition, I would take my ideas and thoughts and my own inner anxieties and put them there and just write them down. Yeah, I don't think you guys can see it properly. Oh, that sucks.
Turn the big lights off.
Where is that switch? Oh no. Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. There we go. There we go. Can you guys see it better? Awesome, awesome. Yeah, super dark. It was a beautiful experience. The first time I could ever collaborate with someone that actually makes such amazing work. And I mean, now I'm pushing the agenda of just trying to collaborate with more and more people and trying to bring my youth into the works and have more and more people understand. This is my collaboration with Homotso Neto. Same approach, thoughts and ideas I had that continuously just flew out of me. Trying to get what's in trying to get what's in me out. Same. Color, I stopped working with color at some point. I realized working with color is cool and it's great, but it doesn't capture what I personally feel. Sometimes I feel like life is just this weird gray spectrum and you're just trying to figure everything out and you're trying to make sense of things, and it's weird, and I think that's the main thing with me. this is more of the recent works I started doing. Yeah, a lot of it's very macabre, as you guys can see. It's very dark. Like, yeah, my work is hella dark. It's crazy, but it's fun. Basically, what I wanted to say at the end of this, I don't know if I made complete sense, you know, is I found what was holding me back. It was my own mental illness, and it was my own strife and struggles and experiences I had as a kid. But find what's holding you back. Understand the roots of your problems. And your craft is that tool right there. Your craft is you finding what's wrong with you and using that to better yourself and better everyone else around you. Use your craft as a tool for good. Look deep within inside yourself. Make sense of yourself and teach others and love others. I think that's the main thing. You know, one of my favorite quotes by Kierkegaard goes, "Life can only be lived forward but understood backwards." And I think that's the main thing right there, is that once you understand yourself and you look deep within yourself, you can actually use what you do, whether you're a musician or a dancer or a painter or whatever you are, you can use your craft to create. Just learn to love yourself, love people around you, and your craft will teach you that. That's the beauty about being human. I think we're a species in community. We don't live in isolation. We can never live in isolation. And I think just loving other people is a craft in its own, you know. So, like, are you willing to change and be the better person you're destined to be? You know? Thanks.
I'm fascinated by people that do the daily thing, that do the daily illustration, the daily photo, the daily thing. Tell us about your experience with that and how that kind of developed your craft, got you in front of other brands. You said more brands that are working. Just tell us about that. Are you working again?
Am I working again? Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
The daily challenge it's really intense, because you need to space yourself out. But the best thing about the daily challenge is that you start experimenting more with yourself, and you start like looking within yourself, and you start making way more art. And more people start seeing that because they start seeing your productivity, and they start seeing how your style starts developing and changing. When you start, like, it's like the 10,000 hour rule. When you start doing something in abundance, you start changing and developing. And with the whole daily challenge, more and more people started recognizing me and my work, because my work's very like heavily detailed. And the fact that I could do that every day, people were like, wow, that's a great work ethic. And it's also a great style and approach. Let's see if we can work with him on that style, you know. And I think the daily challenge really did that, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things that any creative can do, is to like challenge themselves to make something every day.
Exactly it.
Yeah. Questions from you guys? Any at the back there? Yeah.
Was there a point at which you doubted your craft? You said you went to study design, game design. What was the point where you said, actually, I'm going to follow
Illustration
craft as my career?
Well, thank God that mic.
Yeah.
Well, I love drawing, and I doubted my craft way too often, actually. I'm actually right now on a psychiatric sabbatical from university, because I couldn't take it at some point. You know, it was like 2017, doing my 4th year, ready, couldn't take it anymore. And what changed with me, especially with like game design, was I thought it was something I was passionate about. I thought it was something I wanted to do. And then you realize life changes and continuously develops. And there are moments when you're going to doubt yourself. I still doubt my illustrations, like my illustration skills up to this day. I mean, there's days I'll wake up in the morning and I'll look at this piece I did like 2 days ago and I'll be like, fuck, this is terrible, you know. But use that doubt to create better, especially if it's along the lines of what you want to do. If you're like a designer and you do not like your approach or your work, use that doubt to better yourself. It's always the best. I know it sounds like the worst advice, but it helps. It really does help. It really does put you outside yourself and push yourself to be better. I know that answered your question.
Yeah, so it does. The second part of my question is, what do you think the loss that you experienced helped you in that conviction?
The loss I experienced helped me make sense of myself. I had to break myself down completely. When you go through grief, and we've all grieved, and we all had our own ways of grieving, and with that loss, I used that pain and that time and that isolation I had to create something, to make something of myself. Instead of wallowing in my sorrows and drowning myself in all these negative thoughts, I figured I can let them out for once. I can create something from that and have other people that have experienced the same thing look at my work and relate to it, you know. So with that, I think with you know, loss, it made me more of a productive person, which is very weird, you know, but it made me realize that life is short, life is very short, and you never know when your time is up, so make the most of what you have. I know it's the most cliche thing people say, but it's actually really true, you know. I hope that answered your second part, yeah? Oh.
Question at the back there?
Hi, Eric.
Okay, so
How you doing?
So you said that in the beginning there you were trying to get your parents' approval
Yeah.
and all of this stuff. Okay. So at the end of the day, your art is still very it's unconventional, you know, and that's what's become the point. And you've gotten a lot of approval all around from the people who follow you. But do you feel fulfilled in that your parents, have your parents given you that approval that you set out to get in the first place? Or have you been fulfilled?
That's actually like a really good question. You know, as a kid, creating for approval was the biggest thing, especially for my dad. My mom understood my creative process, and she understood I was a creative, and she knew it, and you know, she was a creative herself. Well, she wasn't a creative, but she like appreciated the creative, you know, fields. But for my dad was the main thing. I was like, hey, Dad, please, okay, look at this drawing. Like, what do you think about this? And then I started growing up, and after my parents' divorce and everything, like, I just like stopped caring about my dad. But now, I'm at the point now where I'm looking for self-approval. I'm trying to like do something that I'm actually proud of, and I think that's why I do so much. The approval now has like shifted from this one person, you know, the head of my family, you know, like my dad, you know, to now me trying to figure out myself in the world. And I get that all the time where people are like, wow, your work's amazing, but like, you're doing so great, like, wow. And I'm like, no, I'm doing fucking terrible, dude, my work sucks. It's because I'm still trying to find myself, and I'm still trying to make sense of myself, you know. And I think that approval thing is still there. And I think that's another reason why I create so much. Like, I'm gonna go home after this and probably draw something, you know. So I create so much, because I'm trying to better myself. And I know probably in 60 years, I'll probably still feel the exact same way. But as long as I'm just developing, you know, I think, hey, I'm gonna give you guys some bad advice. I was about to say, like, this is not conventional at all. This is personal, like this is very subjective. But I think that searching for your own inner approval is good for you, because it puts you in a better headspace and it pushes you further. But then again, also don't do that, because it could also make you very depressed. So it's like a gray area. It's a very gray area. So yeah, I don't know.
Alright, thank you, man. So that answers my question. But what I get from you now is that instead of the approval becoming your destination, now that whole journey is the destination. You're searching for the approval now where you want
exactly.
Not want to be, but are and appreciate.
Exactly. Yeah, just trying to, that's the whole point. Is just trying to figure out myself, you know.
Got one there, and then there. Yes, yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I just had a question about, or actually wanted to gain more perspective about your ties to skate culture.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether you believe that skate is more of a spiritual kind of experience, and or how that influenced your work.
Skateboarding is the most underrated sport in the world. Some of the most amazing creatives have stemmed from the skate culture. You know, Barry McGee, I mean, he wasn't a skateboarder, he was a graffiti artist, but everyone around that time in the 90s was all skateboarders. They all grew up in this very, like, progressive and punk culture. Skateboarding is very spiritual. It's how do I explain it? It's this community. It's you being you and finding you in a group of people that never belonged or never accepted, you know. And the only approval you have is that board and that trick, you know. I've had moments where I felt the pure sense of euphoria just cruising down this long hill in town. Knowing you're gonna get bumped by a taxi, but like swerving away, you know. Skateboarding is the most spiritual thing one can experience, and I think it's something that's not spoken about, especially in Johannesburg, because there's a preconceived notion that skateboarders are just aggressive, angry people, but they're generally not. They're actually the most wholesome, loving, caring people in the world, because skateboarding preaches that culture. It preaches that idea of love and acceptance, you know. And yes, skateboarding is, and I love skateboarding, and I will always love skateboarding. I made
Eric through skateboarding. I met a lot of my friends through skateboarding. I am who I am. I'm standing right here now because of skateboarding, you know? Yeah. For skateboarding.
One over here. Yeah.
How much of your work is using traditional media, like ink and that sort of
Yep.
thing?
So
It's digital, and then do you think that using digital media takes away some of the soul of humanity, or that it opens up these doors again?
So my work is 50-50. So a lot of the stuff would be like a pencil sketch. So that was an original pencil sketch. The skull's like a pencil sketch that I took into Illustrator, vectorized it. A lot of the textures are like traditional textures. Okay, this photographs, fuck. Textures. So a lot of it's 50-50. And here's the thing, we live in a generation, in an era where traditional mediums are still there, and they're still respected, and they're still considered as like, you know, the OGs, like, you know. But we live in a digital era where we can take traditional mediums and put them in a digital space. I know there's tons of times I'll do a sketch and the face is so fucked, it's like so squashed in, and I can take that into Photoshop and stretch it out and fix it up and here and there. It does not take away from the authenticity, it just heightens it, it adds it. It just matters on like where you print and how you print. That's it. Nope.
There's another question, that's it, there we go.
Was there a time when you stopped creating or you didn't feel it? What I'm asking is, in high school I was very, very creative. Because I was very depressed, I kind of drew from that, and I couldn't go on to study, so I started working immediately. And I grew up, and now when I illustrate stuff, it's just, I'm not depressed anymore, I'm just happy, and my illustrations feel like,
Yeah.
it's completely different, but it feels like
Yeah.
there's no emotion anymore. Like, maybe because I stopped, or maybe, I don't know, like how do you get that back?
Get back? It's such a hard question. I mean, you know, in 2017 there was a point, because I was in a weird headspace in 2017. From January to about August, where I hardly created. I made like one illustration a month, and she was depressing. You know, I couldn't draw. I felt agitated and irritated, and I was like freaking out, and I just couldn't handle it. But what you're saying, it is possible for you to actually get back to creating again. But I think you created from a negative headspace, which I do. I create from a negative headspace all the time. It's just hard to channel in your creativity through a positive channel. I think maybe try and look at other artists and how they approach creating. Watch, I don't know, I'd suggest looking at artists like Sachin Teng, which is another illustrator as well. He creates from a positive headspace. A lot of his work is like macabre, it's colorful and it's beautiful. Look at other artists and their approach and find inspiration from that. There's 7 billion people on this planet, and I think half this planet is like creative, you know. There's always someone else that's experienced what you've experienced, and there's always another artist that can always help you. Just create from there, just find inspiration. I don't know if that makes sense, because I still, up to this day, and I tell myself no, not to do it. I actually had a conversation with my friend Josh, and he was like, dude, do we put ourselves in negative headspaces so we can create better art? And I was like, no, dude, we shouldn't do that. The other day, I had a painting session with Ayanda Mabulu, and I realized, like, wow, I can create art in a positive headspace. It's just surrounding yourself with people in that headspace, finding inspiration from there, and changing that. It's the total opposite of, you know, being negative and depressed. Like, so listen to sad music, listen to happy music. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Question here, and then here.
Okay. So you spoke about the influences and the Christian and the role of it in your life. I mean, just candidly, like, do you think the film suppress your creativity, or did you choose that to go? I know it's really tough.
That's a great question. I was on psychiatric medication halfway 2015 throughout 2016. And it really did suppress my creativity. But then again, I create from a negative space. So that's why I struggled so hard, I think, beginning of 2017, because I was still on my medication. And I couldn't really draw or create. I felt caged in. So I stopped taking my medication, and I started doing, not other things, not in a bad way, no, not other things. But I started finding other ways of channeling my creativity without being severely depressed. Because for me, I'd rather feel the lowest of my lows and the highest of my highs naturally than actually feel the synthetic sense of like happiness. Not even synthetic, just like this medicated state, you know. It's not a good idea because a lot of people, you can really have like a psychotic episode if you don't take your medication. But that, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it worries me, but hey.
Oh, no.
No, you know, because, like, sorry, I'm hitting this break now.
No problem.
Okay. No, I mean, 'cause the thing is for me, I mean, we're talking about mental illness. It's almost like having diabetes or cholesterol. Sometimes you get pills, even if you don't see it. The creatives almost need that angst to like
Create,
create. And I think it almost like breeds this environment of, you know, people that have greater angst and more challenges than a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough choice.
Yeah, I think it's just depressing being an artist. I mean, like Bus, died at 27 from a heroin overdose, you know, and he was like one of the most amazing like artists out there, you know, it's just depressing to think about. But the fact of the matter is they made art and people can relate to them. I don't think when you make art, you're no longer creating for yourself anymore. You are still, but there's a broader audience. There's 7 billion people on this planet that you're creating for. They're your audience, they're your target. They're people that feel and experience what you experience. When you're creating art for them, it moves on to something else. It moves on to something that's beautiful. It becomes part of humanity, you know. That's what I think.
Another question? Yeah.
You spoke a lot about approval, seeking approval from like various people, various sources. What do you think your work would be like if you actually just gave that up and didn't seek approval from anybody? What do you think your style would be like?
I think I would be working a 9 to 5 because I'm a freelancer. No, not like, you know, but like, no, like offense to everyone that's working 9 to 5. But I personally think if I had that approval and if I had that, I would be creating normal work. I'd probably be working as a graphic designer or an illustrator in a firm, a very comfortable, safe, you know, space, you know what I mean? And I think for me, because I'm so, you know, I just want to, you know, I just want to push and be better, I could never survive in that corporate space. That's why I got my neck tattooed, so I don't ever have to do that. You know? And yeah, I think if I did have that approval, my life would have been very different. I actually don't think I'd be here today.
What if there was like no approval issue?
Nothing.
Like whether positive or negative?
Yeah.
Like approval wasn't a thing in
Yeah.
your life. What do you think is your work with that?
I think I don't know, this is actually a good one. I wish I could go to like a parallel universe with Seth, you know, we actually have approval and everything. I think my work,
Cool.
yeah.
What do you think your work would be like?
Yeah, I think it would be a lot way darker, like way more darker. Because, I mean, this is pretty fine, you know, you look at this, you're like, oh, it's okay. But in actual fact, it's, you know what I mean? But like, actual fact, if like, I wasn't trying to seek approval from like the general populace, this shit would have been dark, dude, like decapitated and fucking guts and, you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, my work would have been much darker. I think in a parallel universe, my work is much darker. Cool.
Close off lot 1, 2. Great, then we're done.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Seth, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Coco.
I've had the privilege of kind of seeing Seth. He's still a child now, but I've
Yeah.
seen him.
Long hair and everything, eh?
It was orange. But I wanted to say, being an illustrator of color is something that's still extremely new in our country, and I know that there's certain challenges that I face also being a female illustrator of color, and I just wanted you to kind of tell us what are some of the challenges that you face, what do you do to overcome those challenges, and is there anything specifically that you do in your work to talk towards inspiring others to do so?
I'm like, so far other than Russell Abrams and Richard, of course, we're the only colored male illustrators I know in South Africa, and it's really hard being a colored male illustrator in South Africa because a lot of my illustrator friends are all white, and it's great because they make amazing work and it's beautiful, and I'm not like shooting any shots, but when you're a colored male, there's this preconceived notion of you being a fuck up, you know what I mean? Because everyone assumes that you're gonna be an alcoholic or a fuck up, you know? So you try and create something that's outside that, but people don't acknowledge that. And that's why a lot of my work is very Afrocentric. It's a lot about people of color, and it's trying to convey this narrative for people of color. That's my main thing, is that narrative gets spoken, and we start this conversation, more and more people start recognizing, and more people are starting to recognize. A lot of internationals are recognizing this conversation. They're like, well, if the country's not recognizing you, we'll recognize you, and you can work with us. And it's a tough one, but in due time, I think everyone's going to have the space where they can create, no matter what ethnicity, no matter what you are. If your talent is there, it will be communicated, you know? I don't know if that answered. Dope.
Last question at the back.
What's up, bro?
Really love your work.
Thanks, bro.
2 questions, they kind of related to each other. The first one, where do you draw the line with regards to like corporate interference in your work, especially when something is commissioned or your work plugged into a bigger campaign? And secondly, I remember when I was coming up, or was growing up, collaborating with brands was kind of frowned upon. It was actually being selling in, so to speak. But when I look around me, I mean, I'm not in the culture, so to speak, in terms of being an illustrator or an artist, but it's almost as if it's more accepted, it's become the norm. So do you agree that selling in is quote unquote fashionable than it was back in the day? And if not, why do you do it?
You know, for me, it's actually pretty hard because my work is so dark and so different. There's only a handful of brands that actually understand like what I'm doing, and they are the brands that like actually really want to work with me and stick with me. And I don't believe in the idea of selling in or selling out. This is Johannesburg, dude. This is like a dog-eat-dog city. You know, you need to make money, and I've always preached like, no, like make art instead of money. And it's great, it's cool, but this is Johannesburg. Life is subjective. That's my own personal opinion. But in the broader spectrum, if brands recognize your work and they want to pay you to do that, dude. Run with it. It gets you paid, it gets you a better footing in life, it makes you live a more comfortable and easier life, you know? So I don't agree with the idea of selling in or selling out. And so many of my friends, like older graffiti artists, would be like, bro, you're such a sellout, bro. Like, you know, you work with these brands, now what happened to us chilling back in the day, you know? And it's like, nah, bro, like, I'm not trying to sell out, you know? I'm just, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm just not trying to sell out, I'm just trying to live, you know? And I don't know, did that answer your question?
Well, it does. And as with regards to people determining how your work should come out, play out, like, do you draw the line?
That's a very tricky one because a lot of the times people actually, when clients approach me for work, they never ever say like, I don't like that, can you change that? I mean, once or twice they do that, but I just do something that I feel and they're like, cool, I like it, let's go with it. Maybe just change green, or let's make it blue, that's it. So for me, I had the privilege of people enjoying my work so much, I've never had to draw the line on me being like, this is my style, this is what I want, and the client being like, this is what I want. It's always just been like this weird, kind of like smooth gray area, you know? Yeah, dope.